We select data for our charts simply by taking the mouse cursor, left click with the left mouse button and hold the button down and just drag the mouse to highlight or select our data. We can select left to right, right to left, bottom to top and top to bottom. It diagonally will select larger groups. If we only want, say, the full names of this list of people and also the results of unit sales for February, we can select them both by first selecting one set of the data using the left mouse button, then press and hold the CTRL key on your keyboard, don't let go, and further select with the left mouse button a second set of data. So two sets of non-consecutive data can be selected with that method. Once more, left click and drag to select continuous data, press and hold CTRL, left click and drag, and you'll add a non-continuous set of data to that series. To create a simple column chart, we'll first select our data. So I'm going to take the first name of some of these users and the unit sales for, we'll just have a couple of months just for the basic data. On the Insert tab of the ribbon, left click, then locate the column chart button in the charts group and left click. And I'm just going to take a basic 2D chart. Left click again. So this is a clustered column chart, and at the moment it's hiding some of the data just to keep everything on screen. But you can see that this is mobile, so you can put it anywhere in your spreadsheet that fits. Okay, let's just put it here for a moment so you can see what's going on. So I have the labels for months of the year, January, February, March, April and May. And we have the data points, the categories of first name, Frederick, Darlene, Elsie. Here they are. And they have their related data points for each of those months. Now you'll notice on the Chart Tools ribbon, I now have a Design and Format menu. And if I choose Switch Row Column, left click, I now have January, February, March, April, May, the months of the year as the series, with Frederick, Darlene and Elsie as categories. And once again, their points on the scale are illustrated by coloured columns on the chart. This time we're going to create a pie chart, and a pie chart represents parts of a whole or percentages if you prefer to use the term. So if I have a 100% achievable number of sales, okay, so these are all of our sales and they will add up to 100%, then each of those values will be parts or percentages of that complete figure. So I'm just going to highlight the values and the names of the people who've associated with those sales figures. And on the Insert tab of the ribbon, in the Charts group, left click on Pie. I'm taking a simple 2D pie chart, left click. Here it is. So let's just reduce some of those values. If you notice what they're, they have these handles, these little dots at the edges of the data. I'm just going to reduce the amount of data we're working with just by dragging the handles to reduce the number of values in the series that are highlighted. And you can see the legend will identify the individuals by their name and their sales achieved as segments of the pie. Okay, so you'll notice up here in the Chart Tools, let's get that on the screen here for you. That Chart Tools ribbon that becomes available is contextual. It's not visible when you don't have the chart selected. When you have the chart selected, they appear. And in the Design section, under Chart Styles, we can see a range and just hover the mouse over them to see the effect of changes. Now this one will add our percentages to the pie. Okay, just the names on the outside of the pie slices, all one color but names and percentages inside, and so on. Each one has its own variety. So any of these you notice with a black background look particularly good on a PowerPoint slideshow if you want to take those over to a PowerPoint later. But it's always useful to have a key or legend that identifies the colors and who or what they refer to in your series, and the values as percentages of the whole on the pie itself. Chart title, we can simply click in here, highlight the existing text and replace it. Let's try and have all of that in the same font and not capitalized. And that's your simple pie chart. I'm going to throw that away for a moment just to show you some of those other options. Again, I'm highlighting the series, insert, pie, and we have 3D options and donuts when you have multiple series. Let's just have a quick look at those 3D options, and again from the chart styles menu we can see a nice visual presentation. I'd like one with the percentages on it for preference. There we go. Now if you click on the pie segments, you'll be able to, I've just got to actually grab it with the mouse, I'm just dragging out, and you can actually remove slightly individual slices of that pie. I'm not quite getting the effect I was after here, but this is what they would call an exploded. That's what I wanted. I wanted individual segments with larger values to stand out from the others. Okay, so that is what they would refer to as an exploded pie chart. Now we'll explore the line chart, which examines changes of values over time. So if I highlight some of our salespeople and the months of the year that they've achieved the various sales units, on the Insert tab of the ribbon, under Charts group, I'm looking at line charts. Left click and taking a 2D line. So very basic looking chart, and you can see that Frederick has sales low in January, peaking in April, whereas Elsie has a fairly continuous slow rise throughout the year, peaking in June, and Darlene has poor performance up until April, when there's a sudden increase in sales there. So I'm just going to move this chart down a little to show you that we can include more data in this chart simply by grabbing those fill handles. Okay, you can see the little dots at the bottom of the highlighted data, and drag down to include the remainder of our sales staff, and they are now automatically all being added into that chart. Now we can resize the chart to make everything a little more clear to see. Okay, so we see everybody's performance changing over time, and being as they're very similar, we might assume that these are due to buyer behaviors rather than our sales staff behaviors, except that Frederick's performance doesn't meet the scale of everybody else. So we need to find out perhaps what Frederick is doing differently, or what his customers are doing differently that attribute to his more varied and perhaps increased sales performance. But it's just a way of looking at the data. That's what we're really concerned about here on this example. So again, on the Design tab of the ribbon, there are different ways that we can look at this data. Okay, and we also have, I've lost what I'm looking for, here it is, Change Chart Type button on the Chart Tools Design ribbon. So I can choose to perhaps look at lines with markers, which will stand out. Let's go back to basic lines. I'm going to remove some of this data. There's far too much on the screen for me to concentrate on what I'm trying to show you here. and we'll put our scales back in as well. Chart title, remember, we can just click into there to create our own title just by typing the text in, and the direction, the placing of our legend or key is largely decided by which of the formats of or styles of design that we're placing for our title, our chart. Distracting myself slightly here. We also have an option on the Chart Tools Design ribbon to move the chart that's selected. If we left click there, you can see that we can create a new sheet and give that a title. And so the whole of, capital I in the middle there, the whole of our chart will now have its own worksheet in the spreadsheet workbook, or you can create it as an object on another page. So let's just show you that on its own page. Press OK. It automatically moves into its own page called Sales Figures Chart. Okay, there it is, sales figures, and the chart takes up the whole space of that worksheet. Some of the chart options have 3D views, which are quite nice for presentations and to demonstrate more clearly the clustered groups of data. So if I were to take a set of this data, and on the Insert tab of the ribbon, have a look at the column chart options in 3D. There's our clustered columns, and as you see, they are slightly 3D, oblongs on the, and then we have 3D stat column where values are put on top of each other for each series. Okay, and that's where they're set out as percentages of a whole. And let's have a look. We've seen the 3D pie options earlier, and we have underlined, we have areas, 3D lines, okay, and the area version of that, there's a 3D area chart. So because the value at the front, Frederick's, are higher, they're kind of hiding what's happening with Elsie and Darlene's values. If I right click on the chart, I have this option 3D rotation. I'm just going to left click on that, and it's brought in a menu on the right hand side here where I can control that rotation, the various axes. So perspective I can increase, and so I'm looking at different views, not particularly helpful for this one. The y-axis rotation, so I can look straight down on that data, and the x-axis rotation, other way, increase it, and I can now look more or less straight ahead there. Add a 3D representation of those values on that chart. So these options are quite useful. What you might also want to play with is choices of color. So if I were to take Darlene's values here, we have a color change wheel up here. So I can just choose a new series of colors for the entire chart. Okay, shades. And I should be able to change the color of an individual sequence. Which I'm having some trouble with. There we go, orange. So I'll just show you that was slightly off screen. Here's the option for solid fill on the selected color block, and I just chose an orange there. We could go for a black. So we have color choices. You can always use pattern or picture fill using an image from your own file. And we could do the same for the background of these charts as well. If I've got the background actually selected, we could choose a picture fill or a pattern fill or color gradients. So there's a lot of options within this format plot area that you might want to explore, and they're all about the presentation of your data. This one will be a little more complex. We're going to look at plotting related but different types of data. So here are fictitious students, their attendance across a program of study, the awards they achieved for completing that study, with that award represented as a percentage result at the end of the program. So I'm going to highlight some of this data, and on the Insert tab of the ribbon I'm going to choose the 2D line chart, keeping things reasonably simple to start off. So I've got three sets of data, but the awards go up to so 1137, so quite a high scale of award is possible, and the attendances are in series of 10 up to 50, so they're quite low, and the percentages, the majority of the percentages are less than half, so again quite low on this scale. So it's hard to see where these values can meet on that scale. So the quickest way to make this more visible is to remove some of this data. I'm going to left click on the line that represents the awards and press delete on my keyboard. I've basically removed the awards. Let me just see if I can get it to show you that. So I've now got just the attendance plotted, okay, from 0 to 35 days, and the achievable results are percentages, and they're plotted across the same scale, so they're not achieving, they don't make sense across the scale of 0 to 35. So the way to compare this data is to set up a secondary axis along the right hand side of this scale. So our percentages will be shown on the right and our days of attendance on the left. This is how we do that. First of all, I'm going to left click to select that green line that is the percentages. You can see the result percentages shown on my original data. I'm going to right click that line. The option I want to show you is off my screen. I'm just going to rearrange where that appears for you, just to make this visible. I'm going to right click that line, and that's what I'm after. Format data series. Okay, left click. And again, that's slightly off my screen. I'm just going to move my window around to get that on screen for you. And in the format data series options, allows me to set a secondary axis. So I'm just going to left click that radio button, and you'll notice that it's now changed. I'm just going to close format data series. You can see the percentages are shown on the right hand side, their scale. The attendance days are on a left hand sided scale, 0 to 35, 0 to 60%. So our values can be plotted demonstrating a similarity, a relationship between the students' attendance on the course and their final results in the examinations. Okay, so we have related data that is still quite different on a scale due to the option to show a secondary axis. To see that menu one more time, I'm just going to left click the line chart, right click on the line itself and choose format data series, and there's our option. You can see on the format data series menu, secondary axis is the option that I was able to choose to put the percentage scale on the right hand side. There's our close X to remove data series from the window. And at any time you actually don't like your chart anymore, when it has the 8 handle window handles available, okay, you can simply press delete on your keyboard and remove the entire chart to start again. When you have this sort of data, and if you're using Office 2016, on the Insert menu, you will find there are combo charts which already have the secondary line series available. Okay, so there's our original data of the awards and the attendance, although the attendance is still quite too low to be shown with those awards, so I'm going to remove them and we can still see a relationship between low attendance, low percentage reward, high attendance, higher awards generally across the scale. And that is how we're shown a relationship in that data. After you've been completing some work in your Excel file, you'll want to keep it, more than likely. So on the top left hand corner, look for File, left click, scroll down and look for Save As, left click, choose somewhere on your computer and browse or use a recent folder. We're going to left click on Browse. We will find our Documents library, and somewhere in here we should have, hopefully, an Excel folder. That's where we're going to keep our Excel files because it makes more sense that way. I'm going to left click for file name and overwrite book 1, which is completely useless, and offer instead today's date. Always useful when you're looking for your file again later. The purpose that I'm putting the file to, Excel example office mix. Editor name is often useful as well, and anything else you want. You have lots of space to type in more information. Okay, you don't have to do your file names this way, you'll just find it easier to locate them again later if you do. Our last step is just to press save. It's going to save in an Excel workbook format, so I'll just left click save and the job is done.